But first, when the United Kingdom leaves the European Union, its closest neighbour, the Republic of Ireland, is going to take an economic hit. A new report out this week says Ireland's unique exposure to Brexit means it faces potentially a huge threat to jobs that could cost the country billions each year. The UK is the second largest destination for Irish goods after the US. The Dublin-London air route is Europe's most travelled. And apart from trade, there's another major Brexit-related issue. Ireland is the only country to share a land border with Britain. It's preparing for the worst and looking for new markets. I caught up with Ciaran Cannon, Irish Minister of State at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, while he was here in Doha. I began by asking him if there is a lack of understanding internationally about the impact of Brexit on the island of Ireland.
I think perhaps there was a number of months ago, certainly in the immediate aftermath of the referendum, when the decision was taken for Britain to leave the EU. I think there was a lack of understanding, but as we now move forward into a critical phase of the negotiations, I think there is more than a good degree of understanding of the challenges that Ireland is going to face, indeed the challenges that Britain will face and the EU as a whole will face. So I do think that as people read more about it, become better informed, I think there is a significant understanding developing internationally of the challenges that we face.
And at this point, despite months of negotiations, there still doesn't seem to be any real clarity on what exactly the UK wants from Brexit, what kind of Brexit is going to be. How is Ireland then preparing for Brexit?
Well, Ireland was in preparation for Brexit a number of, I would say, at least 2 years before the referendum actually occurred. We were preparing in the hope that the decision to leave the EU wouldn't be taken, but on the very morning that it was taken, a significant number of key strategic actions were kicked into place immediately. While there may be no perfect clarity from the UK government as to how they want to move forward in the approach, we have been nothing but clear as a country from the very, very beginning. We deeply regret the decision taken by Britain to leave the EU. I think ultimately it will prove to be a retrograde step for them. But we, on the basis that the decision has now been taken, we have to act and work in Ireland's interests. And when I say Ireland's interests, I mean the whole island of Ireland, including Northern Ireland, because it is critically important that the hard-won peace that exists now in our country, that took years of diplomacy and effort on all our parts, can be at times a fragile one, so that needs to be protected in the context of Brexit, and all the provisions of the Good Friday Agreement, which brought about that peace, need to be honoured. Also the fact that we have now a seamless transition of people and goods back and over across that border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, that needs to be protected. But all of those things have been given strong, concrete commitment by the EU, by our partner countries in the EU, and indeed by Britain, that those things will be protected in phase 2 of the negotiations.
This is part of the problem, isn't it? While you say that there is clarity on the part of Ireland, it's not clear what the UK government wants to see out of that. I mean, the state of the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland does seem to be directly challenged by Brexit. This open border that you're talking about that was negotiated 20 years ago in the Good Friday Agreement, this is at the heart of the whole thing, isn't it? Just explain to us, for our viewers who might not be familiar with this, why this matters so much to people, not just in the Republic of Ireland, but in Northern Ireland.
Well, we are a tiny island on the edge of Europe, and post-Brexit, we will have the only land border between the EU and the UK will be on the island of Ireland. And that is a significant part of the consideration and how exactly Britain structures, and indeed the EU structures, Britain's exit from the EU. It's critically important for us as an island, a small island nation, where agriculture, for example, is a huge part of our economy. We have farmers producing milk in Northern Ireland in the morning that is processed in the afternoon in the Republic of Ireland. We have that free movement of people and goods back and over across our border, which has led to significant economic growth in both those jurisdictions, which has led to peace in both of those jurisdictions. And that is what we're trying to protect here. So I think people need to be aware internationally of how important it is to Ireland that that border remains open, free and seamless.
But Ireland also wants to ensure that there are as few barriers to trade between itself and the UK as possible. So if there is no deal worked out, if there is what some in the UK are calling a hard Brexit, no deal, What impact is that going to have on Ireland and its key industries and jobs that you were talking about earlier?
We have been working very hard over the last number of years, long before Brexit, to diversify our export opportunities internationally. For example, our trade in China has doubled over the last number of years from 7 billion per annum to 14 billion per annum. 17% of our trade, national trade, is with Britain. It's a huge part of our economy, particularly around the whole food and agricultural sector. So we want to protect that as best we can. But ultimately, if Britain takes the decision to fully leave the customs union and all of the trading arrangements that allow goods and services to flow freely between Britain and Ireland, that is going to pose a challenge, not alone for Britain, but indeed for the whole of the EU.
But is Brexit all bad for Ireland necessarily? I mean, how do you see the country adapting to it?
Thankfully, it's not. And we see significant opportunities arising for Ireland as a result of Brexit. Post-Brexit, we will be the only English-speaking common law country in the whole of the EU. And when countries worldwide, from all across Asia, the Middle East, and the US, want to establish a presence for the very first time in the EU, in an English-speaking country where it's very, very straightforward and very easy to do business, we're hoping they will choose Ireland as that platform to launch themselves into a market of 500 million people, a market that we're fully committed to, and a market where we've already established very, very strong trading relationships. So we do see that as an opportunity for Ireland. We also see the opportunity where some of the financial services sector, particularly in the City of London, where they choose to relocate internationally, we are competing with locations like Frankfurt, Paris and Brussels, that Ireland will become a very attractive location for them to relocate to and to invest in. So it's not all bad. In fact, that opportunity to pitch ourselves as that launch pad for the English-speaking world into the EU will be a very positive development in the future.
Ciaran Cannon, good to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed.